Hey everybody, welcome back to the Throwing Partners podcast. It's Kirby and Joseph here, coming to you on a Monday night. Joe's team just lost, so Joe's not in the best of mood. I'm in a great mood because the Braves are currently up 9-1, which is just awesome because they haven't scored 9 runs since God knows when. We're going to do our usual Braves and Astros updates. We are also going to talk a little bit about Shohei Ohtani and being the sixth man of the 40-40 club. We're also going to talk about Scott Service getting canned and the Judge versus Bonds debate. So, Joe, I'm going to let you start us off with an Astros update.
Drive into left! At the wall! It's gone! Tie game!
All right, so the last time that we talked, the Astros were playing the Boston Red Sox in a 3-game series. The Astros won that first game of the series, if I recall. We had a chance to talk about that right after their win. Yainer Diaz hit a walk-off home run off of Kenley Jansen, which was very reminiscent of the 2017 World Series. We've kind of had like a full circle, like, Bregman hit a walk-off off the Dodgers that felt very 2017, and then Yainer Diaz hitting an absolute bomb off of Kenley Jansen, who was the person that gave up the walk-off hit in Game 5 to Alex Bregman. So it was kind of like a full circle, like I've gotten all the 2017 vibes back. But after that, they're kind of gone because the Astros have not played well since then. They would end up losing the series to Boston after dropping the final 2 games. Their offense hasn't been great as of late, and I can't say that for the middle game of that 2-game series against Boston because they did produce 5 runs, but it just wasn't enough. This was I believe this was Ronel Blanco's start. Yep. And he only pitched 3 2/3, and the Red Sox were able to tack on 5 runs on him. He had 4 walks and 6 strikeouts. He did not pitch great. And it hasn't been great for Ronel Blanco. I think that the 5-man rotation is really gonna do him wonders. Wait, no, 5-man or 6-man? Which one is it? Oh, 6-man rotation. Yeah, I just brain farted. 6-man rotation is gonna do wonders for him. He pitched a lot better tonight, and I will get to that game in a minute because that was brutal as well. But the Astros scored 5 runs. The Red Sox scored 6. They weren't able to complete a comeback after the Red Sox tacked on one more after the Astros had tied it in the 8th. The Red Sox tacked on one more to secure the win late. And the Astros had their opportunities. They just did not come through. And then for the final game of the 3-game series against Boston, the Red Sox would win 4-1. This was Justin Verlander's first start off of the IL since going down 2 or 3 months ago. And he pitched pretty well. He gave up 2 runs or he gave up 1 run in both the first and the second inning. He pitched 5 innings. He only allowed those 2 runs. He gave up 4 hits, and he had 6 strikeouts with only 1 walk. So I think that he pitched great. He definitely did just enough to keep us in the game. But unfortunately, we had 8 hits and we only scored 1 run. So that means that we had a lot of runners left on base and a lot of runners left in scoring position. And we just were not able to come through. Again, we had our opportunities. The offense has not been able to pull through. And they've kind of done a little bit of lineup mixing. The Astros were still without I believe this is when Alex Bregman went down, so they were still without Bregman for the first game of the Red Sox series, but the Astros scored 5 runs. And then the second game of the series, the last game of the series, the Astros rested Altuve, and they just haven't played with a complete lineup in the last 5 to 6 days, even dating back to the Tampa Bay series, which they were able to win that series, fortunately enough. But they just haven't been at full strength for a while now. Bregman dealing with his injuries, and Kyle Tucker is still not back, so they've had to do a lot of lineup shuffling. Joe Espada's had to get creative, and then you have to give some of these guys, days off. They're in the middle of 18 consecutive games, so they've had to give Altuve a couple days. They even gave Pena a couple days off because he's been a regular in the lineup almost all season. I think that was the first game he didn't play all year. And then moving on to the Orioles series, you had Jordan not playing in that those last 3 games of the series, dealing with neck stiffness. Fortunately, he was able to play today, but it didn't matter because I will get to that in a minute. But the Astros and Spencer Arrighetti would shove against the Baltimore Orioles, moving past that Red Sox series. He would pitch 6 innings, give up 3 hits, and he would strike out 6 in that Orioles lineup. And the Astros were able to hit Corbin Burnes pretty well. He pitched 5 2/3. He gave up 8 hits, 5 earned runs. He only had 2 strikeouts and he had 2 walks. So the Astros did a really good job of getting to Corbin Burnes early. They just, I mean, they got a lot of not hard hits, but they were just hitting them where the Orioles weren't playing defense, and they were just playing gritty baseball. This was probably the best game of the road trip so far, and it's been a pretty brutal road trip when it comes to close losses thus far. So you move past that Thursday game, and then you immediately go to Friday after you're, feeling high from that really good win where you absolutely dominated against the Orioles. And then, you come out and you give up 2 in the first 3 innings, and then you immediately tack on 4 runs in the third. And you're like, okay, awesome. We're right back in this game. It's 4-2. Yeah, you even tack on 1 in the 6th, so it's 5-2, and you're like, all right, we'll cruise to a victory after the 6th inning. And you go scoreless in the 7th, but then you have an 8th inning where Brian Abreu has a complete meltdown, only pitches a third of an inning, gives up 5 hits and 5 runs with no strikeouts and no walks. Hunter Brown shoved. He's been great as well. Him and Spencer Arrighetti just keep going bar for bar, back to back. And he only gave up 3 hits, gave up those two runs, only one of them earned. He had 1 walk and he had 6 strikeouts. So he pitched well enough to win the game. He deserved that win, and unfortunately the Astros failed him. Brian Abreu specifically failed him, and it was pretty brutal because in the bottom of the 8th you blow a 3-run lead and you give up 5 runs. It's pretty hard to come back, and cross 2 on the board, and with only a half an inning left of game. So the Astros obviously didn't stand a chance. Sir Anthony Dominguez came in and closed the door on them, getting the save for the Orioles. That was a really heartbreaking loss in a season. I've said this already before. In a season of heartbreaking losses, the Astros just continue to pile up the heartbreakers. The 1-run games, the 2-run games, the late inning losses. I think Brian McTaggart keeps putting out a stat, and he updates it almost every time they have a loss like this, where they're like 0-54 in games where they trail after the 8th inning. So that tells me that this team's got no heart. They got no clutch gene when it comes down to the 8th inning, and they don't have the lead. Which is pretty brutal because you need to be able to do that if you want to actually be successful in the postseason. And this team just hasn't been able to do it. And this was kind of one of those situations where it was, but I do admit that Brian Abreu didn't give them much of a chance because he blew the lead in such a late part of the game. They really had no chance to come back. So that was another brutal loss on Friday, and then Saturday was even more heartbreaking. And once again, the Astros playing shorthanded without both Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker at this point, but they're making sure that they get Victor Caratini in the game, trying to make that lineup as long as possible. And then Ben Gamble, he's been a pretty sneaky good pickup so far for the Astros in the limited time that we've seen him. He did really good on that Thursday game, and then he had another really good game on Saturday with another 2-hit performance. He's got a really good feel for the zone. He takes his walks, and he's batting 290 now. So, it's been really good to see him get in there. I know that he's kind of just a stopgap till Kyle Tucker gets back. But it's very encouraging to see that the Astros have another potential decent bat off the bench when it comes down to the postseason when we get going there, because I do think that he will make the roster now if he keeps continuing to perform well. Framber Valdez, he pitched well enough to win the game. Again, he got into some trouble in the 6th inning, only going 5 2/3. He gave up 6 hits and he gave up 3 runs, but really the defense kind of failed him. The Astros defense has been god awful as of late, and it's kind of been awful all season, but it's really starting to hurt the Astros, and it's really starting to prevail as of late because this wasn't counted as an error, but it should be. John Singleton just completely took the wind out of the sails for the Astros on a play where Colton Cowser hits a ground ball to first base with 2 outs. Singleton plays back on the ball, and Cowser just runs his ass off and beats Singleton to the bag. Now, Framber wasn't covering the bag, but I don't think that should matter. That ball was hit slow enough to where Singleton just needs to take 2 steps forward on the bounce and pick that thing and then step on the bag, and then you're out of the inning. But Framber comes out after that. Taylor Scott comes in, and on the first pitch, Jackson Holliday, who was 0 for 21
he has
recently,
in 23 bats.
Yeah, that was his first hit in 23 at bats, and he clears the bases because that got the bases loaded. He clears the bases with a 2-out, 3 RBI double, and that is where the Astros would lose the game. Let's see, it was Altuve and Pena hit home runs in the game, and that was the Astros offense. Again, just leaving men on base. They left 5 men on, and they were 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position. So really what that tells me was they just got a bunch of singles, and they may have walked a couple times, and then they couldn't get any hits with that, which obviously is the case because they only had 2 hits and they were both solo home run, or they only had 2 runs and they were both off of solo home runs. So that was another heartbreaking loss. But luckily the Astros would bounce back. They wouldn't let that fester. Then they would win 6-3. And this almost turned out to be another heartbreaking loss because, again, the Astros, with a late inning or semi-late inning lead, just find a way to give it away and let the Orioles back in. The Astros would score 3 in the 4th, and the Orioles would come back and score 3 in the 5th off of Kikuchi. This wasn't his best start, wasn't his worst start. He had a low strikeout total, and he kind of got in trouble with his walks. He gave up 2 hits, 3 runs. He had 3 walks and 4 strikeouts. He pitched 5 2/3, so that was good. Hector Neris made his re-debut with the Astros and pitched 1 1/3 innings, only having 1 strikeout, but he was able to get the Orioles to roll over, fly out, that good stuff. Ryan Abreu came back and he looked good. He had 2 strikeouts, and then Josh Hader came in and got the save. So that was good to see. Yeah, I mean, it was a good win. Yainer Diaz and Alex Bregman went back-to-back late in the game to kind of seal the deal, and so that was good to see. And I think Ben Gamble had another good game. He had 2 hits, and he scored 2 runs because he also drew a walk. I mean, he's been playing really well. Zach DeCenzo contributed as well. He had a 2-run RBI double in the game, and the offense kind of clicked. Unfortunately, they weren't able to carry that momentum into today's game because the Astros would lose another heartbreaking game. to the Philadelphia Phillies in a 2022 World Series rematch. Um, the they couldn't get any runs across. Hits were not scarce, but they couldn't scratch a run off the board. They were 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. They left 8 men on base. Shea Whitcomb had a 2 RBI double, so in back-to-back games, both rookies contributed. But the Astros lost in extra innings on a Manfred ball single, a single that otherwise would have just continued the game, but it ended it this time because there was a runner on second to start the inning. Another one-run loss. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Reynald Blanco went 5 2/3. He went longer than I was expecting. He gave up 2 runs and he gave up 7 hits. He had 5 strikeouts though, so kind of a better start than we've seen lately, but still not where he was early in the season. As I mentioned, I think the 6-man rotation is really going to help him with that extra day of rest, but I think they might need to phantom IL him for a little bit, just for 2 starts. I think he needs it. He is definitely fatigued, and he's kind of pitching himself out of a postseason role as it stands. But I think that there's still a long reliever chance for him. But there's another heartbreaking loss to Bryce Harper with a RBI single to walk off the game against the Astros tonight. Justin Verlander, I believe, has the mound tomorrow against the Phillies. Yep, so he's going up against Aaron Nola, and we're really looking to get another good start from him. And we're hoping that, with the Astros as healthy as they can be right now without Kyle Tucker, put out a decent lineup and are able to put some runs on Nola, who's been decent this year. He's been pretty good. He's got a 3.45 ERA, so he's no scrub. I'm just hoping that they can get on him early and Verlander can kind of settle in and dominate that Phillies lineup.
Well, Joe, I'm sorry that your team lost tonight. I know that puts you in a rough mood. But my team did well against the Phillies. So that started off the week for the Braves. They had a 3-game set against the Phillies. They would win the first one, lose the second one, and then take the rubber game, which was great because so far in the year, the Braves are 6-3 against the Phillies. Tuesday's game, like I said, they got the win. It was a 3-1 win. Reynaldo Lopez, first game back through 5 innings. He had 1 earned run. He only gave up 1 walk and had 10 Ks. Great game for him. And he just looked dominant. Man, that guy looked good. Really, there wasn't a whole lot of offense besides Whit Merrifield having a triple and a double. And Marcell Ozuna having a homer off Zach Wheeler, which was an absolute missile. Marcell continues to do the thing that the Braves need more than anything, which is offense. Wednesday's game, it was a loss, and it kind of sucked because I really thought that they had a chance to win this game. They had a chance to win this game several times, actually. They lost 3-2. However, we did see a much better start from Max Fried, which he went 7 innings. He gave up 2 earned runs. He had 1 walk, and he had 4 strikeouts. We saw a big 2-run homer from Orlando Arcia. Maybe he stared at Bryce Harper. I don't know. But regardless, the Braves still lost, so it didn't really matter. Thursday, we saw them win that game 3-2. Spencer Schwellenbach. But this guy right now gets a postseason start. He went 6 2/3. He gave up 2 earned runs. He had 1 walk and 9 Ks against the Phillies. Great start by him. I saw a stat the other day. I think it's like in his last 8 starts. Guess who he has been as good as? Paul Skeens. That tells you everything to know, everything you need to know about how good he is, and how good he has been. Because, man, the stuff is there. This guy throws 6 pitches, and he throws them all well. He's not afraid to throw strikes. He's not afraid to throw inside. Schwelly's got a really bright future. This is one guy that I hope that Alex Anthopoulos decides to lock up for the next 7 or 8 years on one of those AA-friendly deals. We saw a really big RBI double for Gio Urshela. And let me just say this, Joe. Since he came over to the Braves, he has played excellent defense in the absence of Austin Riley. With the Tigers, he was -2 outs above average as a third baseman. With the Braves, he's +2. So that's been really a really bright spot so far for Gio Urshela. In this Thursday win, we also saw Adam Duvall hit a 2-run homer. I'm sorry, just a solo homer. Oh, and then Friday, I guess the weekend set rather, we saw the Braves play a 3-game set against the Nationals, who this year they have struggled with, by the way, which doesn't quite make any sense to me, because they're not good. Friday, they got a 3-2 dub. We saw Chris Sale go 7 innings. He gave up 2 earned runs, had 1 walk and 4 Ks. He brought his ERA down to 2.62 on the year. He is the Cy Young favorite. He might win his first Cy Young as a Brave compared to all of those good years he had in Chicago, the couple good and healthy years he had in Boston. So what a story that has been this year for him. Michael Harris hit a leadoff home run that night, which was great. A good start to the night. Then also, he also had the game-winning walk-off error. He hit a ground ball to C.J. Abrams, and Abrams made a bad throw, and that was the ball game. Off once again the Manfred rule. So it was an ugly win, but you just can't lose pretty. So I was glad to see it done there for the Braves. Saturday, the Braves actually won 4-2. The Braves had a pretty good start from Charlie Morton, who has looked much better as of late, which means that he is due an absolute dud here soon. He went 5 2/3. He gave up 2 earned runs. He had 2 walks, but he had 6 Ks. We saw homers from Arcia and Ramon Laureano, who was also playing really well since he came over from the Guardians. So for those of you who said that, well, Alex Anthopoulos really didn't do enough at the trade deadline by just getting Jorge Soler and just getting Luke Jackson, the guys that were picked up off the scrap heap, like Whit Merrifield and Ramon Laureano, those guys have been absolute studs. I'm going to talk about Whit here in just a little bit. Sunday was an ugly loss. They lost 5-1. They wasted a really good start by Reynaldo Lopez. He went 6 innings. He only gave up 1 run. He did have 3 walks, which isn't great, but he had 7 Ks. Just a wasted start. Luke Jackson gave up 3 runs in the top of the 7th, and it was ugly. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Ugly half inning. Don't even want to talk about it. It was that strange. There was an error, a pass ball, a wild pitch. Just a stupid top of the 7th. With that series win against the Nationals that they had this weekend, they are now winners of 4 straight series, which is exactly what they need to be doing. So I'm really happy to see that. They took the series from the Giants and the Angels out west. They come home, they take a series from the Phillies and a series from the Nationals. I said I was going to talk about Whit Merrifield. Let me share some of this with you. Since Whit Merrifield got to the Braves, first of all, he was DFA'd by the Phillies. Okay. Now, this is before tonight, and tonight he's 3 for 3. So his slash line right now was a 267 average with a 396 OBP and a 400 slugging percentage. Okay, with a 128 WRC plus and a 0.9 FWAR. He's 3 for 3 tonight, so all of those look better. He's probably hitting close to 280. He's probably got an OBP close to 415 or so, and a slugging percentage probably at 420. So that gives him like an 840 OPS. That's great. He's probably got a WRC plus right now of like 132 to 135. Those are all-star caliber numbers. So he had a really bad error yesterday. But overall, he has been absolutely solid. He's got a good arm playing second. He runs the bases extremely well. I know he doesn't have the pop like Ozzy, but he's actually overall, in my opinion, playing much better than what Ozzy was. Ozzy's range is not there anymore. His arm is not there anymore, and this year he hasn't had the pop like he has in the past. So Whit has really filled in nice. I don't know what the Braves are going to do with him when Ozzy comes back. My thoughts are that they don't rush Ozzy back and they let Whit continue to play. So it's been a really nice asset that the Braves have actually brought in between Merrifield and then also Laureano. Joe, that's pretty much my Braves update. Are you ready to talk some around the league stuff?
Yeah, let's talk about around the league. There was some pretty big news that happened over the weekend. It's kind of funny, but then again, the Astros are playing with their food, so not very funny. After getting swept by the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Seattle Mariners fired uh, Scott Service, who was always just the biggest loudmouth, obnoxious manager. He was always looking for a fight. It was so annoying playing against him. Yeah, he was finally canned after a very long stint in Seattle. Um, and they've kind of found new life, I guess, kind of. They played the Giants and they won a series, and their offense didn't look completely lost, kind of. I mean, there's only so much you can do with the roster, that they had, um, and with the budget constraints that the front office has been dealing with. Um, I mean, they're like trying to pin it on somebody, but it's really nobody's fault other than the ownership not wanting to spend the money to field a better team. So, I mean, what is he going to do next? Fire Jerry Dipoto? I don't know. Because we've only had, I mean, they're playing their fourth game currently and losing 1-0. A 4-game sample size without Scott Service. They won 2 of the 3 that they've already played, and they're currently losing tonight. But they're 4 games out. Unfortunately, though, with all this turmoil, the Astros have not been able to take advantage of the Mariners being absolutely horrible in the last 2 weeks. And they have only been able to gain like 1 game. They've actually lost ground. And they're actually only 4 games back now instead of 5, which it was 5 a couple days ago. But the Astros lost that heartbreaker on Friday, and the Mariners won, so that's when they gained ground. But the Astros haven't been able to gain any more ground on them. I mean, the Astros are kind of doing what the Mariners did early to them in the season, and they're kind of just playing with their food, not taking them serious. I don't know if they're not taking them serious, but they're not taking advantage of their horrible play as of late, and the Astros have played just as bad as them. If I want to share my honest opinion. The only thing that the Astros are really doing well right now is their starting pitching, which is something else that the Mariners also do really well. So, I'm just hoping that even with our tough strength of schedule, we can continue to gain ground on them, even though they're playing the Rays, who have, since the All-Star break, had the worst offense in baseball, besides, I believe it's like the Chicago White Sox. So that's not very encouraging. But yeah, Scott Service fired in Seattle. It's now 1-1. So the Rays gave up the short lead and are now tied with the Mariners as we speak.
Well, Joe, you mentioned them getting swept by the Dodgers, so that's a great segue into our next topic. This week, we also saw Shohei Ohtani become the 6th member of the 40-40 club. Which to me, Joe, is still one of the most special things that happens in baseball, because it just doesn't happen very often. And here's the fun fact, Joe. First of all, no members of the 40-40 club are in the Hall of Fame. 4 of them have connections to PEDs. The other is Ronald Acuna Jr., and then the 6th one, who just joined last week, is Shohei Ohtani. So for me, all of that is so interesting. It's so difficult to do because not only do you have to have great power, you've got to have great speed, which means that not only are you hitting home runs, you are also getting on base at a really good clip to be able to steal bags. So for me, I think it's incredible what Shohei is doing. Now, granted, he's doing this as a DH, so he's not having to use his legs as much as you would with all of the other guys who were on this list who played the outfield, with maybe the exception of Soriano, which I think he played second base. So for me, it's a really special club to be a part of, just because you've got Bonds in that, you've got Soriano, you've got Canseco, you've got A-Rod. So for me, it's a really amazing club to be a part of. I don't know what the odds are that Shohei does this, but I would be thoroughly impressed, Joe, if he made it to 50-50. I know what Judge is doing is great, but if Shohei makes it to 50-50, that to me has to be one of the top 5 offensive seasons in baseball history. Because first of all, nobody's done it. Nobody's even been relatively close. So to me, it's one of those things. It's like, I kind of want to see him get to 50-50, even though Ronnie just got to 40-70 last year. Just to see, people's reactions to it. And then it makes me think too, Joe. It's like, okay, obviously we know that Shohei, not only is he a phenomenal hitter, he runs the bases extremely well, but next year he's going to pitch. And just what this tells me is that if the Dodgers ever decide, well, Shohei's days on the mound are over, he's going to play right field, center field, left field, first base, even whatever he may play. He's got such good legs that he's going to be able to spin. He's going to be able to use those legs and give you 20, 30, 40 stolen bases every year. The dude is just a freak athlete. He takes incredible care of himself. And it's special to watch that guy play. Like, he is literally a true generational talent. I don't know if there's anything that you have to say, Joe, but this guy literally has a 6.3 F4 just as a DH, and he's second to Lindor, who has a 6.5.
Yeah, I mean, he's a unicorn. I think the idea that he could actually come back and maybe pitch this season in the postseason is scary. Him and Yamamoto both making a push to try and come back. Man, that would just be crazy. If they could get Glasnow back too, and Kershaw can stay healthy, that would be a monster right there. That'd be a four-headed monster that I think a lot of teams would like to avoid. Even with the Dodgers' history of choking in the postseason, I think that's a rotation that could be absolutely deadly. But yeah, like as you were saying, I mean, that's just like the numbers that he puts up are insane. You shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to hit 40 bombs and then also throw 100. It just shouldn't be possible. And pitch as well as he does, have command of the zone, and have a feel for breaking pitches. You've never seen that before. And I kind of think what the future entails for players that aspire to be two-way players, and what we could see come out of Shohei Ohtani's time in the MLB, what his legacy will be, and what kind of impact he has on the game in the future. Because I would love to see more guys like him in the league. I think everybody would, because, as I said, he's a unicorn, and it's just incredible what he does. I know a lot of people are going to try, and a lot of people are also going to fail, but I would love to see more two-way players like him. I mean, they have rules now for guys like him. So if more players wanted to try, that possibility is very real. And he's kind of laid the groundwork. So I think it's exciting to see, the future. And he's been a great example for the game. He's been a great ambassador for the game, just growing it and continuing to go out there. He's a great person. I know that earlier in the season we were joking around with, his gambling addiction or whatever. I mean, the league is going to do whatever they need to protect him, whether he was or was not involved. But I mean, he's good for the sport, and that's why the league would protect him even if he was involved. But I mean, what he's doing is impressive. I think it's more impressive than what Judge is doing. Because as you said, I mean, he's doing this and he's rehabilitating from Tommy John surgery and hitting 40 bombs. I don't know how many players could do that. I really don't. And at the same time, he's making a very strong and viable push to actually pitch for the Dodgers again this season, or for the Dodgers this season, not again. But yeah, I just think it's really impressive. With the new rules around base stealing, I wonder how many guys we will see that have incredible speed and power be able to accomplish this, like Ronald Acuna and Shohei. I think when I think of guys like that, I also think of like Ellie De La Cruz or Corbin Carroll, guys that have some really good pop, but also some crazy fast speed. So I look forward to seeing how they take advantage of the new rules and how, that evolves over time as well.
Well, I think I think the idea of Ellie maybe being a 40-40 guy is in the realm of possibility. But there's one guy right now in the league that actually has a 9 F4 as well, in Bobby Witt Jr., who I think could probably be a 40-40 guy. Bobby Witt Jr. is so young, Joe. He's not even, he hasn't even really filled out yet. He's gonna fill out. He's gonna get stronger. He's gonna get bigger. He's a lot like A-Rod when he first came up. He was wiry. He was fast. He's extremely skilled. Now A-Rod's obviously his was a little more PED led when it came to his strength growing. But Bobby Witt's gonna fill out too. We're gonna see him get more power. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up having a 40-40 season. It wouldn't surprise me if Gunnar Henderson does it as well, because he's also got really good speed. So those two guys probably are at the top of my list for guys that could potentially be a 40-40 season. But you have to be able to stay healthy for so long to be able to do it. And that's just so hard for some guys, especially when you're playing the outfield every day, especially on some of these playing fields that are not great. Some of them are really difficult to play on for the guys. But we're talking about historical stuff, Joe. I've seen so much stuff going around. People are just in awe of what Aaron Judge is doing. Joe, yeah, it's great what Judge is doing. Okay. He's got 52 homers right now, something like that. So this is the third time in his career that he has broke past the 50 homer mark. The first time was his rookie year in 2017. The second time was in 2022 when he set the AL home run record. And then this year. But Joe, people have been comparing Judge to Bonds, and it just irks me. Now, granted, the game 25 years ago is so much different than it is today. First of all, 25 years ago, there were no iPads in dugouts. You were not looking at a breakdown of your swing right after it happened and being able to make that adjustment right there on the spot. Also, too, Barry Bonds did not play in Yankee Stadium. If Bonds would have played in Yankee Stadium, Bonds might have hit 85 with that tiny little field that they've got. Now, granted, Judge doesn't hit wall scrapers. He doesn't do that. Now, the one he hit yesterday or the day before, that was a wall scraper. But overall, this dude, all of his home runs go like 20 rows deep because he is that big and that strong. I've always, people always talk about, well, the pitching is so much better today. Well, did anybody ever watch the at-bat with Bonds and Eric Gagne? Bonds took Gagne deep off 99. And he hit it like 440. To say that Bonds would be a lesser player in today's game because of the pitching, I think is so asinine. Because we have seen what Bonds could do against the best pitching. So for me, it's really interesting because if you look at both of them right now, they both have a career WRC plus of 173. Obvious Hall of Fame numbers. Bond's career slugging is 607. Judge is 606. Now here's where it gets interesting, Joe. Okay, through their age 32 seasons, which is where Judge and that's where Judge is right now. And I looked at what Bonds had done through his age 32 season. Bonds had put up 92 B WAR he was already a Hall of Famer at age 32 because he came in the league so young. Came in the league at age 21. He had 374 homers and 417 stolen bases. He could have quit and retired and gone to do whatever with his dogs and been a Hall of Famer. He had an OPS plus of 162. Now, mind you, for those of you who are uneducated about how good Bonds was, his best seasons didn't come until like age 36 and beyond. So people are talking about how historic this year has been for Judge. Let me just share this with you, okay? So this year, right now, Judge has a WRC plus of 226, okay? That would be Bond's fourth best season of his career. In 2002, this dude put up a 244 WRC plus. In 2001, the year he hit 73, which Judge ain't getting to 73, guys, sorry. He had a 235 WRC plus. In 2004, he had a 233 WRC plus. Okay? So literally, as good as Judge has been, that is still fourth best compared to Bonds. Okay? And also, for those of you who don't know, Bonds had probably the best eye of all time. Bonds only struck out 100 times in a season, like one time in his career. Other than that, he usually had like twice as many walks, if not 3 times as many, when he was walking like 180 to 220 times a year. The plate discipline for Bonds was phenomenal. I don't know why more people choose to pitch to Judge. It's beyond me. I guess that people think that they are that good that they can get him out. But for me, I would just walk him because behind him is pretty much nothing. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
I mean, if you're the Houston Astros in the postseason, you want to pitch to him because his postseason stats are god awful. But
Horrible.
outside of that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, every time I see an Aaron Judge home run, it's just a cookie, like either a cement mixer slider or hanging curveball right over the heart of the plate. I don't think I've ever seen him hit a bad pitch out. It's always these giant meatballs that are right down the middle. So I don't understand what the pitchers go up there with what kind of game plan. Just try to throw it right down the middle to him. But I mean, what he's doing is impressive. But as you were saying, I saw a stat somewhere saying that this would be Barry. If Aaron Judge was Barry Bonds, this would be Barry Bonds' 11th best season of his career, something like that, which I think is insane. That just goes to the kind of player that Bonds was. But I think that a lot of people, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that Bonds was on PEDs in the later stages of his career when he was having those really good years, and the fact that PEDs and some performance enhancing drugs can make a baseball look the size of a beach ball. I just think that those kind of do play a role into some people's thinking. And what Aaron Judge is doing right now is impressive. I think that Barry Bonds also did handicap himself playing in one of the most unfriendly hitters parks, and that didn't help him, but somehow he still had those crazy numbers. As you mentioned, if he was playing in Yankee Stadium, I'm sure that he would have hit like 80 home runs. And we wouldn't even be talking about Aaron Judge in the same light as him, even if you factor in the steroids, because that still would have been insane. But yeah, I see the comparison. I see why people want to compare them, because they are two of the greatest home run hitters of all time. But yeah, I think Barry Bonds his numbers are just out of this world compared to anybody. I mean, he's probably the greatest baseball player of all time, and it's unfortunate that his career is surrounded by the controversy that is steroids. Even though other guys have made a career in steroids and haven't been penalized. So, and there are some that have, and there's some that haven't. He just happens to be one of the most prominent figures in that era. So
I think it's really interesting, Joe, because tonight, actually, or today rather, Judge just got his 1,000th career hit. For me, in my opinion, if there's anybody that I could actually kind of compare Judge's career to, it's that of Mark McGwire. A lot of walks, a lot of strikeouts, a lot of home runs, very high OBP. Because McGwire, I think, ended his career with like maybe 1,600, 1,700 hits, somewhere in there, 500 and some odd home runs. I ultimately think that's where Judge ends up. I think he ends up with, granted, if he stays healthy for the next 4 or 5 years, I think he ends up with maybe 500 to 550 home runs, probably less than 600 overall. He has a difficult time staying healthy, which is really, unfortunate, because they're going to be paying him through like age 40, age 41. So I don't know. I'm interested to see where his career goes, because he's 32 right now. He's managed to stay healthy this entire season thus far, knock on wood. But it's going to be interesting to see like where his career numbers are like 4 years from now, 5 years from now. Are we talking about a guy that's knocking on the door of 500 home runs, 600 home runs? Where are we at? Soto said that he could break the home run record, which, sorry to break it to you, Juan, it ain't going to happen. You got to hit another 450 home runs to break that. So I don't think that's logical to think about, because he just can't stay healthy enough. And he's too old. He's 32. If he was like 27, 28, then I think there would be a legitimate chance. But he's 32 years old.
Yeah.
His career is so interesting because he got started so late. Unlike actually, it's funny to me because, Soto said that Judge could break the record, but if you go and look at how young Soto was when he started, if Soto just stays healthy and has like good to great seasons every year, he actually has a legitimate shot to hit like 650 to 700 home runs, because he started so young and was so good so young. So, for me, it's just interesting. The league is in a really good place right now because they've got a lot of really talented guys who are overall fairly young, and are in their prime or are like rising stars. Just the American League alone, you've got Gunnar Henderson, Bobby Witt, Judge, Soto. The American League is just Jaron Duran. How can I forget about that guy? He's gonna end up with like 50 doubles and like 20 triples. And then the National League too. Obviously Ronnie is hurt, but you've got Mookie, Freddie, Shohei, and then there's so many guys that you can name. The league is just in such a good spot when it comes to talent, and just honestly overall some great athleticism. But Joe, is there anything else from around the league that you wanted to talk about tonight?
Well, not really around the league. Kind of also going back in time. There was a really interesting documentary that was released on Sunday night. I didn't get to watch it, but I did get to see a couple of the clips throughout the week as MLB Network was teasing it. And it was about Greg Maddux, and just the freak that he was on the mound. Some of the things that they talked about, like how he would call his own games, or how he manipulated Jeff Bagwell 3 months before a potential postseason matchup. Just the kind of mind that this dude had is insane. And I know that you grew up watching him. So kind of what are your thoughts on that whole documentary, and if you've had a chance to watch it?
Okay, so I have not had a chance to watch it yet. However, Joe, once again, the game was different then. You didn't have the box on the TV telling you what a strike was and a strike was not. You didn't have, umpire scorecards to tell you how good or how bad they were. Maddux had Eddie Perez behind the plate. He had Javi Lopez behind the plate. He had great guys behind the dish. It's one of those things, Joe. Maddux could make a ball dance and move however he wanted to. Here's what people don't know. Maddox could throw 95 miles an hour if he wanted to. He didn't want to. He wanted the ball to move. And if you ever go back and just watch some of these old clips of him, they call him the professor for a reason because all of his stuff literally looks like one of those. What are those balls that you can throw that like they just move like? Is it a blitz ball or whatever?
A blitz ball?
Yeah,
Yeah, blitz ball.
that's literally what all of his pitches look like. It's unreal how much the two seam moves. Go watch any of his breaking balls. It honestly looks kind of fake. I heard a cool story one time from him when he was talking to the pitching ninja, and Maddox threw this ball in the dirt, and catcher threw it back to him, and it had a giant like a dirt clod on it, and they were like, "Do you want a new ball?" He goes, "No, I want to keep this one." And that dirt clod on that ball made his breaking ball break so much, like it didn't even look real. It had this incredible spin on it. So Maddox was there. Let me say this: there will never be another guy like Greg Maddox. A lot of people thought it was going to be Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks was never going to be that guy. It never will be that guy. He's going to lose his job and end up in Japan within 2 years. There will just never be another guy because that's just not the way the game is right now. I mean, I don't know if have you ever seen when he dressed up in disguise to fool Chris Bryant after he won the MVP? Have you ever seen that clip, Joe?
I think I did. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that.
Unreal. That's so cool. Maddox is old there. He's like 55 in that video. So, the thing is, Joe, he was one of a kind. He was incredible to watch. He's so smart. And the thing is, Joe, if you just looked at him, you would think that this guy was probably like your accountant. He didn't look like a baseball player. He's not big. He's not real strong. He's brilliant, man. He's just smart. He's probably one of the smartest people to ever put on a baseball uniform. Between him and guys like Tony Gwynn and, honestly, Bonds was smart too. People just don't know it.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. Like, those guys thought about the game in such a different way and looked so far ahead at different. I mean, I could go on and on, Joe. This is what I miss about my childhood was there was so much more strategy then than there is now because now it's all about power pitching. I'm going to try to blow it by you. I'm going to throw you a slider, and I only throw 3 pitches total. And I throw the slider 33% of the time. I throw the fastball 50% of the time. I throw the changeup 12% of the time. So then when guys actually threw like 4 to 6 pitches, like you actually had to be a really good hitter to like kind of like have an idea of what was going on. But nowadays, like I'm sitting fastball all day, and I mean it's not the same. Everything again was location. Command was so big. I remember being a little kid reading a book from Roger Clemens, and he was like, "You need to be able to establish the fastball first and be able to throw it like 10 to 20 times in a row for a strike where you want it before you throw any other pitch." And it's just not like that nowadays. We have throwers, we don't have pitchers, and we don't really have hitters. We have guys that smash baseballs like slow pitch softball guys do. It's all about power, and there's no finesse. There's not a lot of hit and run. There's not a lot of hitting the ball in a gap. It's all it's a lot more 3 true outcome, which kind of sucks. It's not as exciting in that way. Now, granted, I hate bunting. You know that I hate the bunt.
Yeah.
But I love the situational hitting a lot. The hit and run is a big one for me. Being able to poke one through a gap somewhere, but I don't know. It's a different time right now. I don't know if we'll ever go back to that era, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think so. And you mentioned how smart he was. I mean, he was just a mind freak on the mound. I think that's why they called him the professor, because he was already 4 to 5 steps ahead of you when you were already when you were just stepping in the batter's box. He knew what he was going to do to you, and what the result of that at bat was going to be. I mean, just the one clip of him facing Jeff Bagwell was so impressive because his catcher at the time was talking about how Maddox knew that, Bagwell liked the fastball down and in, and that they had a game plan to go away, and how Maddox called off his catcher to throw him a chain, or it was a fastball down and in, and Bagwell absolutely smashed this. It was like an 8-1 game at that point, so Maddox was like, "I'll give him that." And I'll give him that because I know that we'll face him in the postseason and he will be looking for that same exact pitch. And as soon as he comes off the mound after facing Bagwell in the postseason, striking him out on 3 changeups away, he goes to his catcher and he says, do you remember that at bat from 3 months ago? I was setting him up then for what I wanted to do now. And he was just like 10 steps ahead of you. I heard someone say that the Astros were never getting past the 90s Braves with that kind of mentality. And I wasn't alive to see it, but I can imagine that I would want to throw my TV out a window watching those games, because I've heard about the sheer dominance that the Braves established against the Astros during that time period, and how frustrating it was to be an Astros fan at the time.
It was honestly, Joe. In my lifetime, the Braves have had 2 World Series. They won in '95. They won in 2021. '95 was special. I was a toddler. I don't remember it. And then really they didn't go to the World Series until 2021 after going in '99. And for me, Joe, there was so many years in there in the '90s and even the early 2000s that they had the potential to win the World Series, and it didn't happen. They should have repeated in '96 after they went up 2-0 against the Yankees. But then the Yankees swept them after that. They lost 4 straight games. They should have won. There's so many times. Honestly, 2010, they had a great team. They had a phenomenal bullpen that year. That was Bobby Cox last year. You thought they were going to ride high on some of that. But then they lost to the Giants in the division series, and the Giants won the World Series that year. But it's just things like that, Joe. It's, we ride the real highs with our teams. We ride the real lows with our teams. When this era of Braves came in and, they won their first division in 2018, we knew that they could do something special. And here's what's crazy too, Joe, is that when Mike Soroka came up in 2018, 2019, they actually told him that their biggest window was going to be between 2021 and 2023 to win a World Series. Well, what ended up happening? They won the World Series in 2021. Now, granted, he wasn't a part of that, unfortunately. But to me, I thought it was so interesting because they were already looking like 4 years ahead at how good they were going to be then. And believing in their player development and the guys that they were signing long-term to actually become the superstars that they knew that they could be. Which to me is, I don't know how people evaluate that, to look at somebody like Ronald Acuna Jr. as a 16, 17-year-old kid and say, this kid right here is going to be an MVP at age 25. Or Ozzy Albies is going to be a 5'6", switch hitting second baseman that's going to hit 30 home runs as a 27-year-old. I don't know how the player development to me is one of the most intriguing parts of the game, because the White Sox tried the same model as the Braves, and they absolutely crapped the bed doing that, because they had guys that had just as much talent as some of these guys, but their player development failed them horrifically. So, we talk about player development often, and there's about 6 or 7 teams who do it extremely well. Half the teams do it okay, and then the bottom third tier sucks. And it's horrible. So I don't know. I think player development is in my opinion the biggest part of an organization, to really bring out the best in your guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think player development is the biggest reason why the Astros have been on, why we're in the golden era of Astros baseball right now. I'm just gonna put it like that. You were just talking about the '90s Braves, and if I'm being honest, they remind me a lot of the 2010s and now 2020s Astros. Just the sheer dominance over such a sustained amount of time, just having their chances to win World Series after World Series, and whether it be due to injuries or due to just some of the luckiest, just the luckiest moments going against them, just not having their um, dynasty be absolutely cemented by championships, but by really great years that just weren't like they weren't able to finish. I think it comes down to player development because the Astros have been doing this for so long that they've had so many young superstars rotate out of their everyday lineup, like Carlos Correa or George Springer. How they're able to continue that success even when they have a guy on the team that is currently injured for 3 months, with the world's worst bone bruise and Kyle Tucker, and how they've been able to play some of their best baseball of the season without him. And he was a perennial MVP candidate. Having the player development down in the minor leagues to be able to have these guys ready for when their number is called and have them ready for those big moments. I mean, two guys on back-to-back nights, rookies, getting it done for the Astros. Having two RBI doubles, Zach DeCenzo and Shea Whitcomb. Guys that are just able to come up and perform. Spencer Arrighetti making the adjustment. Hunter Brown making the adjustment as well after having a pretty good start to his career in 2022, not having it in 2023, and now finding it here in 2024. I think that it speaks to the player development that the Astros have and this sustained success that they've been able to carry over now into their 8th season.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, Joe, is as much as people want to say that the golden era is ending for your team, and people want to say that, well, the Phillies are looking better than the Braves, our teams every year, for probably the next 3 or 4 years at least, are still going to be in contention to make the postseason and also make a deep run at another World Series title. Which is great for us because we're going to have a lot to talk about in the next 3 to 4 years. So, other than that, Joe, I don't know that we have anything else to talk about tonight, do we?
No, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
I agree. Well, guys, we've had a great podcast tonight. Once again, thank you for listening. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. The Throwing Partners Pod. Our views keep going up. One of our videos has like almost 200 views on it, which I'm like, oh, that's great for us. And then also, too, remember, we are on Apple Podcasts now. You can find us on there if you want to listen to us, when you're driving to work or maybe when you're at the gym. We would really appreciate it. We would also really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review on there. That actually really helps the show because that helps us bring us to the top. And then last but not least, as you can see, I am wearing a Throwing Partners Pod hat. I had the patches put on the other day. So if you would like a hat, feel free to reach out to me. I will try to get you one. So I would love to see some friends of ours wearing some merch. That would be pretty cool just to get the word out about us. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate the support. Joe and I love doing this. This is one of the highlights of my week. So thank you, everybody.
Yep.
We appreciate it. Have a great night and a great week.